Chapter 23, The Great Depression. And here's where it all starts, in a Hooverville. What is a Hooverville? These are homeless people, been thrown out of their homes, nowhere to go, so they grab whatever garbage or scrap metal and they construct their own home, and a guy next to them does it, and somebody else does it, and before you know it, you got this shanty town in the middle of all the other cities. This one's in New York, by the way. This one's in Central Park. The Hooverville, something you'd never think you would see in the United States of America in the 20th century. But there they are. They are all over the place because unemployment is at 25%, probably higher. Good estimate given all the records we have. So how did we end up with the Hooverville? Well, your friend Hoover was in charge, Herbert Hoover, the president, and right or wrong, he's the guy in charge, so he gets all the blame. Hence the name Hooverville. Now, the Great Depression, we talked about this in the last lecture. Let's go into some detail. Good idea to write this down. Essay. Good essay here, maybe. Now, the Great Depression didn't just happen one day. It was a slow motion kind of cascade. It all came together at the absolute wrong time, like there's ever a right time for a depression. It started somewhere in the mid-20s when everybody's over there at Gatsby's place having a great time at his pool. It started kind of in the Midwest, southern plains, maybe Oklahoma, places like that. Decline in the agricultural sector. They were so productive that the prices were really high, so people went into bankruptcy. Crop prices so high they couldn't make any money, or so low rather. They couldn't make any money, and everybody started going bankrupt. Also, the topsoil was being eroded due to manifest destiny, all that in the mid 19th century. So this was a slow motion disaster unfolding. Declining demand in manufacturing and a lot of things, particularly autos and appliances. There's also housing and some real estate speculation going on. But this was the big one. Automobiles and appliances. This you could actually track. Because if you're making cars or household appliances like stoves and refrigerators, it's a company where you need people to work, to put stuff together. The stuff gets shipped out, goes to some store, store employs people, they sell it to somebody. That somebody is buying a refrigerator made at your factory. And when they stop buying the stuff, it starts backing up on you. So you have to cut production. If you cut production, you start cutting workers. And now you got rising unemployment. And these workers who might be buying this stuff don't have the money to buy it. So here comes a decline in manufacturing, here comes a decline in demand, here comes a decline in output, more unemployment, and it just starts a vicious cycle, and it's very hard to get out of that cycle. And then, of course, there was the practice of buying stocks on margin. We spoke of that earlier. Is where you have a stock, let's say it's $1, and you're buying it for 7 cents. They buy a lot. They make a lot of money, so maybe they pay you back, maybe they hang in, and then the entire market collapses. And once it starts to collapse, everybody panics and they start trying to pull their money out. And guess what? You don't have the money to pay back the stock you just bought. Bit of a problem. And the guy who wants the money from you, he's got a debt he has to pay, and they have a debt, and it just goes all the way down the line to the banks. We also have huge levels of debt, bad use of credit. People using credit and they can't pay it back. Both consumers and businesses. So, like I said, here we go. Can't They don't have the money for the stock, don't have the money for the debt, and everyone's going broke around you. And then that led to a banking collapse because banks are not covered. The deposits are not covered like they are today because of the Great Depression. FDIC, Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation. If you have $100,000 in the bank, it guarantees that if anything happens, you got at least $100,000 in the bank. If you have more than that, lucky you, but in case of a collapse, they're not going to cover anything beyond $100,000. And of course, this banking collapse happened due to the bad credit policies. And what made the banking collapse even worse because say the bank has a bunch of customers and all their accounts are worth close to $1 million, chances are they don't have $1 million in that bank. They might have like 200,000. And then everyone starts running in trying to get their money out, and you get yours out, and you get theirs out. And before you know it, you can't get your money out. You get 50% of it, and the guy behind you gets 25% of it, and they give you this IOU, which doesn't mean anything. And before you know it, you got a riot at the bank started from the back of the line. Not a good thing. Great Depression. Very, very bad. And it gets worse. Now, U.S. Army veterans from the First World War were promised a bonus. You're going to get this bonus in that distant future year, 1945. Well, in 1932, I kind of need that bonus now. So all the veterans got together because, they were unemployed, had nothing else to do. And it's like Coxey's Army again, except this time it's a little bit more dangerous because these are veterans from the First World War. They know how to organize, they know how to fight. Usually you get people camping in front of the White House or someplace not supposed to be. You call the cops chase them off. Doesn't work too well against a First World War veteran. Okay, they're organized. They know how to fight. They get into platoons and organize themselves, and the cops aren't going to be able to handle that. This is always an interesting picture because these are clearly cops. These are the vets. They built their own Hooverville. Remember how military units used to be segregated? Yeah, not anymore, man. Not with money involved. He's ready to go fight anybody for his bonus. And everyone's rallying on him. This guy's picking up a rock. Our friend here's got some kind of pipe or something. This guy's already engaged in battle. Looks like a spoiling attack. Well, the cops can't handle it, so let's call in the Army. How about that? U.S. Army against U.S. Army veterans. How does that make you feel? Things are just getting pretty bad. Who do you think was commanding this U.S. Army expedition against their former vets? Name Douglas MacArthur mean anything to you? Yeah, how do you think he felt about this? He almost resigned his commission on the spot. And who was his XO, executive officer? A guy named Dwight D. Eisenhower. Believe me, neither one of those guys were feeling too happy that day. Now, when you think about the Great Depression, think about Hoover Dam. Why is Hoover Dam so important? Well, it provides electricity for the whole Southwest, one good thing. But when you look at it, this was built to help alleviate the Great Depression. Now, I'm going to build this dam. Who can build it? Well, private enterprise, everybody's broke. So the government has to do it. The only people with any kind of money, right? So if I need people to build this thing, boom, we got an immediate need. Jobs. You work here, you got a job. Maybe you mix cement. Maybe you're helping with the water. Maybe you built the road leading here. It's a job. You got some money coming in finally. Inspiration. Look what we can do. We are down. We are hurt. It's the worst economic crisis in our history, and we could still find the determination and skill to build this thing. And it sends a message about the future. Look at this. We're going to get out of this depression. We're going to work hard. We're going to work together. We're getting out of this thing. And when we're done, everything's going to be better than ever. So think of Hoover Dam when you think about the Great Depression, or if you run into a tough spot in your life, as we all will at some point. Now, here's the guy who's going to rescue us, FDR, Franklin Delano Roosevelt. As you guessed, 1932 election does not go very well for Hoover. He loses big time. Here comes FDR. Strangely enough, Herbert Hoover's a self-made man and everything collapsed. Here we got Franklin Delano Roosevelt, who's related to our friend Teddy. He's a Democrat rather than a Republican, and he's kind of born rich. So kind of strange, but he's going to try and pull us out of this depression thing. So here's the goals he outlines for everybody. The 3 R's: relief, recovery, reform. Relief: give somebody a job like Hoover Dam. Build roads, maybe. Lots of roads need to be built. A lot of our interstate system dates back to this, believe it or not. So now you got yourself a job. Recovery: you got money coming in. Now you can save some of that money. You've covered the bills. Now you can actually spend on some stuff like, say, automobiles or appliances for perhaps. And then reform. Yeah, we're going to make sure this doesn't happen again. Just like Hoover Dam. Relief: build the dam, got a job. Recovery: now you get to save the money and spend it on something like maybe Las Vegas nearby. And reform: it's going to be better than ever because now we got electricity for the Southwest. We're going to make sure it doesn't happen again. Now he's got a program called the First 100 Days. It's a bank holiday. People stop rushing the banks. They don't have any money, no point in going there. The Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation, we talked about that. This is set up to defend most of your holdings, so at least you got something. It brings confidence back to the bank. People start to come back to the bank with their money and start loaning and hopefully get businesses rolling again. This is just the beginning because there's no easy way out of this depression. And no one's really sure how to do it because they've never had to deal with something like this before at this scale. There's Franklin Roosevelt as a younger man. This before he got polio when he could actually walk. Somebody wanted to see this picture. I said, Mr. H, I always see that picture when he's older. What he look like when he's younger. Oh, there he is. You can tell it's still him. FDR's our guy. What's the first thing he does to make himself popular? Get rid of prohibition. The 18th Amendment is repealed by the 21st Amendment. Great way to get popular. Let the booze flow again. Could lead to some other problems. But hey, everyone's happy. They got a beer. Now they're going to discuss how to pull ourselves out of this thing. And here comes the alphabet soup. That's what I call this, alphabet soup. Look at all these organizations. The Public Works Administration. Those are the people building Hoover Dam and all the roads. Civilian Conservation Corps, same sort of thing. Young men who are unmarried, we're going to plant trees and build roads for a whopping $1 a day. Got to start somewhere. Tennessee Valley Authority, just like Hoover Dam, except it's in Tennessee. It worked great in the West. We're going to try it in the East. The Agricultural Adjustment Administration. Remember those people that couldn't make any money farming? Well, we're going to pay you a set amount of money so you can get your farm back going again. And of course, the National Recovery Administration. All these are government-run organizations. They have to be. Nobody's got any money, right? The private sector is completely broke. Like I said, if you're looking for a job, the guy you're trying to get a job from is in that, bread line with you. So there's really nothing you can do. The U.S. government has to step in. Not everyone's happy about the U.S. government stepping in and amassing all this kind of power, but it's nothing you can do, man. And because of FDR, we're going to start this huge journey together with one step and probably a beer. FDR uses the radio to talk to people. This is new technology, but the reason he's using it is because he's trying to speak one-on-one. It's like he's talking to you. You're sitting in front of the radio at 7 o'clock, and he's telling you what we're doing. He's telling you about the Agricultural Adjustment Act. He's telling you about Social Security. He's talking about all this stuff, and he's talking to you. That's what it feels like because it's, radio. He's trying to make you part of the team because you are part of the team, right? United States of America. We're in this together. So he's not some distant figure out on a hill. He's reassuring. He's trying to talk to you one-on-one, and he would give a report card on the progress that they were making. Some things were working, some things weren't, but he's going to tell you what's going on. And you, my friend, just like everyone else, is part of the team. Now, he presents something that caused a little bit of a controversy. One of his fireside chats, he brings out what he called the Second Bill of Rights. And this is what he was proposing. He wanted all this codified into law that every American would have a right to a job. He wanted every American to have an adequate wage and a decent living. Every American gets a decent home. Every American should get medical care, and of course, economic protection, sickness, accident, old age, unemployment, and everyone has a right to a good education. Now, the reason this was somewhat controversial and it didn't pass, some people saw it as communism. And to be honest with you, a lot of this stuff we've already done, and it kind of started in the Great Depression. Adequate wage and decent living. That's what the minimum wage came from. There was no minimum wage before 1936. Decent home, that's Section 8 housing. That's where that came from. Different opinions on that. Medical care, that's what Obamacare was all about. And of course, different views on that. See this? This is Social Security. This comes out of the 30s. Old age, unemployment insurance, Social Security, good education. We're still working on that, but if you're at Southeastern Community College, you've got a good education, right? Every American right to a job. We're still kind of working on that. You still have to go out and get one, but they try to make it easy. And like I said, it comes up to free enterprise versus what do you actually owe your fellow human being. So still working on it. This didn't go through, but like I said, America, work in progress. And FDR would say this quite often during his fireside chats. It's not always easy, but that's life. Be strong and know there are better days ahead. We already know that, but it's nice to hear a guy like FDR tell us that, right? Don't worry, we're going to get there. You and me together, we're getting there. Don't worry about it. Well, FDR is not invincible. Even he lost a few. The NRA, National Recovery Administration was actually declared unconstitutional, so he had to scrap that, but the rest of it was okay. The second Bill of Rights, some people saw it as communism. They couldn't get that passed. FDR tried with all the work projects and Public Works Administration and everything, could not get unemployment down under 16%. 1941, when the war breaks loose, suddenly everybody's got a job at a factory. But that number, way too high, just cannot seem to cut into that. And we had the Roosevelt recession there from 37 to 38 when everything was starting to collapse again. As you guessed, FDR wins re-election easily in 36, then this thing kind of hit. But, like we said, it's going to be a hard climb uphill, man. Well, the New Deal gets extended. Once he wins re-election in 36, they renewed everything, of course, except for the National Recovery Administration, which was declared unconstitutional. Social Security Administration came online. So, like I said, part of that second Bill of Rights is there. The Works Progress Administration, this is more, planting trees and building highways and working on infrastructure kind of thing. So, the New Deal, it's there, it's working. Like I said, can't get that unemployment down, but the U.S. government's got to do something, man. It's just, this is such a huge crisis. Something has to be done about it. Well, that's going to handle the Great Depression. Hopefully, we ended up there on a slightly high optimistic note because the world is going to get nasty and the world's coming to us. Second World War up next. Have a great day.